Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast, way out there in Hawaii, the Northern Mariana Islands, America Samoa, the rest of the Pacific. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's sunny in Philadelphia and it's sunny down here in Maryland where I'm at. I'm curious on how it is all the way heading down to Atlanta and Florida for where some of you guys are at. Great to see you guys here early from California. I love seeing this widespread mix. Everything I do is virtual. So that I can reach the most amount of people across the entire country. I don't want you to be blocked. I actually was looking at this one great event, but it's in DC. And I'm in the DC area, so it's easy. But for many of you, you're not. And I learned that lesson when I was a government contractor, that when you live right next to the Pentagon and all of the federal headquarters here in DC, it's pretty easy to go into any agency. But when you're farther out into Kentucky or beyond, it's much harder on you. And so everything I try to do, I try to make it virtual, but it's a great way for you to also network with each other. Let me go ahead and get some of these captions turned off and we will dive into the meat of today's training. Thank you for showing up early and on time. I really appreciate it. Usually I give you a tip for success, but I forgot to do that. So, your tip is come back tomorrow and I'll give you another tip and show up early, bring a friend. Actually, by the way, if you bring a friend, training's always free. Now, technically, training's always free, but if you bring a friend, it definitely is free. All right, I'm in a good mood. Apparently, my 3 or 4 weeks of being sick at the end of December has not impacted my 2026. I'm looking forward for us getting rocking and rolling today, talking about success being 99 or 90% showing up. I learned this my entire career on many different aspects. It could be something as simple as in school when you're on a sports team or something. The more you show up at practice, et cetera, the more the coach recognizes you and the more training you get, et cetera. You get better. When I started my career, I started in vacuum cleaner sales door to door when I was 18. And success was about showing up. If I just showed up every morning, we'd play Eye of the Tiger from Rocky and we'd be clapping our hands really hard first thing in the morning, and then we'd head out and start knocking on doors. And if I just showed up at enough doors, I had success. And this is flows straight into billion-dollar sales in the federal market, right? Whether we're going after $100,000, $1 million, $1 billion, it's all the same thing. Success really is down to showing up. There is some skill in there too, right? But today we're going to be talking about showing up. Sometimes we don't hit the mark that we want, our revenue goal, our sales goals, et cetera. And what I submit is that you're not, losing or missing out on those goals because you're bad at what you do, or your company doesn't have the ability to support the mission the government has. I submit you're losing out because federal buyers can't find you when they're ready to buy from you, or when they're researching companies that can influence their requirements as they're thinking about their acquisition, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I would submit that you are good at what you do. Your company is good at what you do. That's why you started a company. So for the most part, I think everybody's good. For the most part, I think everybody has a subject matter area of expertise that you have around your business. And the key is being in front of the buyer, visible to the buyer, so they can learn about what your skill set is and the experience you have where you've been paid for by other people. That gives that credibility to your company. But anyways, if no one knows that, you're not going to have any success. What I like to say here is that what most small businesses are getting wrong is that you're thinking that winning is about being the best. And literally, I work to be the best at government contracting, at Microsoft SharePoint, which was my last government contracting business. We did everything. But if that's all it is and we're the best, but no one knows who we are, then how will I ever make any money, right? Or other times what we might do, and I don't know if you're guilty of this, is that we just wait for the RFP to come out to prove our expertise. We're going to write a response. Well, at that point, the government buyer is not really learning about you. They're just looking at proposals to see if they're compliant and moving the compliant ones into a final decision-making phase. But there's no influence you really have in there. It's a checkbox kind of an exercise for the most part. You definitely can write winning proposals, so I don't want to go off on that. Really quickly on that RFP thing, right? At that stage, you can make one teeny mistake and it kills you. But at the earlier stage, if you can become visible to buyers when they're looking early on, one mistake's not going to hurt you. And what I mean by this, Steve Prince is out there on LinkedIn. He's an expert in the GovCon space from a legal standpoint. He's a lawyer or retired lawyer now, he likes to say maybe. But he's constantly on LinkedIn sharing lessons with us. One theme that he shares are protests that companies do when they lose a contract sale with a federal buyer. And he just did an example this past week, which I thought was fantastic, and an analysis of this protest that a firm lost. And the reason they lost is because they were wrong. They put their logo, just their company logo, on the home or the title page of their proposal. They lost because of that, because that logo was an image, and the image had their company name written there, ABC Company, right? They lost because of that, because inside the requirements, or the RFP, the request for proposal, the guidance from the government said, don't put any images with words. And they did this, right? And I'm not getting into it. You definitely need to follow Steve Koprince, follow his newsletter, subscribe. But my point is, when you're farther down in the life cycle of the acquisition life cycle for the federal buyers, it's easier to make one simple mistake where you lose out. But when you get engaged early on, when you are where the buyers are looking, when you're showing up over and over again, teeny little mistakes like that aren't going to prevent you from winning millions of dollars in business. And the last thing is, we assume that buyers will figure it out. They'll figure out who we are. They'll figure out that we're so great. We were awesome. This is why I do what I do, by the way. My last company, I did not really learn about government contracting until I sold my last company. And that was my second company that I had built successfully and sold. But I was good at sales. That's the only reason we had a lot of good successes, because I was good at sales. But if I had actually understood how the federal buyer worked, which I now am an expert at, and I teach all the time, if I had understood that, then I would have realized that just because we're the best and just because we can go toe-to-toe with Microsoft doesn't mean that some random buyer over there who doesn't know who I am from Adam would ever figure out who we are unless I'm in their radar. But if I had just done some simple things I'm going to talk to you about today, I would have been visible to them when they were looking for companies like mine. And this is what I want from you. If you feel like you're great at what you do, like me, hey, we're experts at this particular area. If you feel like you're great at what you do, but you're not getting the traction, then I submit you're not visible to the buyer. And this is something I've been teaching since 2018, because I find it is one of the most important things we can do, and the easiest things we can do to be visible to a buyer, to be able to move us forward. I want you to stop being invisible among this pool of 350,000 small business government contractors who were registered to sell to the federal government. Every year, 20 or 30,000 new businesses come in. I want you to be visible to the buyer when they're looking for you. And that's kind of the whole reason we're talking about today. If that's what you want, put visibility rocks in the chat. Visibility rocks in the chat. Let me know that's what you're here to learn and excited to learn about. Okay, so I'm going to break up today's training into 3 sections. First thing is, when do federal buyers look for you? I was trying to figure out the 5 W's and a how, right? What's the best order? So when do they look for you? How do they look for you? And how do they decide which ones of you they're going to decide to reach out to, talk? So the second thing I'll talk about is that. And then the third thing is, where do they look, right? Where do you need to be in order to show up? Because you can only show up like when I did vacuum cleaner sales, or when I did government contracting, right? We used to walk the halls of the Pentagon. You can't do that anymore, right? So how do you show up where they're looking? That's what we're going to cover down on the third. Thanks for putting visibility rocks into the chat for those of you who are doing it. By the way, let's start with visibility. What do you sell? Don't give me a whole big chat comment thing. Make it 3 to 4 words at most. Just go Microsoft SharePoint services. Something like that. If you put that in, let the rest of us know what you sell. Maybe it starts sinking in over and over and over again every time you tell us. I can never get tired of you telling me what you sell when you say it in a straightforward way that starts being memorable to me. By the way, if you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I am the president of GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I am a founder and entrepreneur. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I already told you I've had multiple businesses, but I want to welcome you here to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner after I got out of the Army, 2 different companies. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. And this is what I want for you. I want your success to be predictable for 2026 and 2027 and beyond, right? If you haven't followed me on LinkedIn yet, I saw some people from YouTube and some other places. definitely connect with me on LinkedIn or follow me on LinkedIn. I'm almost out of connection requests, but you can follow me on LinkedIn and see the content I put out. Just this morning, for example, I put out a notice about there's 715 RFIs that are due in the next 30 days. I found 2 in there that I really liked because I wanted to write a response to the RFIs to show you in a separate training. Hey, here's how I respond. But one was like website content development. So any of us do an IT website management, that's a great one. And another one was generative AI. For all of my AI friends out there, if that's what you do, there's a great RFI that you might want to look at. But there's 715. And I put it out this morning. So it's a great way for you to get in there. By the way, when I put these posts out, you can engage and maybe connect with some others who are giving it a thumbs up. This is how we build our network. This is how you can build your network. Also, make sure you subscribe to my newsletter, the Government Contracting Success Newsletter. It is the largest government contracting newsletter out there. I'm twice as big as any other government contracting newsletter. I grow faster than the SBA and DOD's newsletter. And the reason is because I put content out that I think you would value. I don't put fluff stuff out there. I put stuff that talks about, if I'm your advisor in your company, this is what I would be telling you Monday morning in a staff meeting. Here's our success guidance for this week or something. So check it out. Last thing on this page, I'm excited tomorrow. Kate is coming. Let me just make this a little bigger here. Kate's coming from KZO Consulting, and she and I are going to be talking about post-award. How do you make sure that you're getting all the dollars from the prime contractor, if you're subcontracting, that you deserve? Often she runs into companies that are missing out on money, and she's going to tell us how that happens, why that happens, and then what to do to avoid it. So I hope you can join me for that. We got over 100 people coming in and excited about that topic. Okay, really quick. Actually, let me back up one slide, because this slide, really one of the main things about this is networking. We currently have over 100 people right here live. I have 150 or something who are registered, but 100 people are here live. This is your network, right? It's not just my network. So don't spam everybody, but look around, say hi. You come back over and over again with certain things. Like I'm looking at Christine Best says, interested in generative AI RFP. Well, if that happens to be your world as well, maybe reach out to Christine and say, hey, let's at least connect on LinkedIn, maybe follow up. So don't forget, you've got the great gem that is Neil's training. I love talking in third person, but you got my training, but you also have your networking. And so make sure if you're open to networking, just put that in. I'm open to networking. Okay, let me put Neil in a corner here and talk about, when do federal buyers look for you? In the federal market, and really in sales in general, the buyer has something called an acquisition lifecycle. The seller, us, we have a sales life cycle. They align with each other. And so what you need to understand about federal buyers in particular, and frankly, you could equate this with commercial or state and local, but you could also equate this with federal industry partners, teaming partners, who would be looking for somebody like you. And so what you want to do is understand the acquisition life cycle. For the most part, the acquisition lifecycle starts with an idea. Somebody in a program office is like, hey, we need this thing, or I'm thinking maybe we need to go that direction. Here's a good example. If my elevator is broken in my building, then the idea is not that big of an idea. We need it fixed or replaced, right? That's kind of the idea. But I talked about generative AI, which is the future thinking. Well, in that case, the federal buyer is probably thinking more along the lines of, man, AI is everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. I need to figure out how AI can help my command, my office, execute its mission more effectively for my federal agency. And so that idea phase is when I'm noodling it around, or my program office peers, or we're all talking and we're like, what should we be going after? What should we be thinking about? What are the options out there? We bought elevators before, and they went up and down on cables. Should we be looking at rockets or whatever? Like what's the newest thing? They have a responsibility for doing market research, understanding two main things. Where is the trend in that thing they're trying to buy? Like understanding that requirement more, which we in the industry can help. And the second thing is understanding who within the industry can support us. Can we be supported by small businesses? Or are we trying to buy a battleship and really only, Northrop Grumman or somebody can build it for us, or Lockheed, right? I don't even know who builds battleships, actually. Airplanes, I know Boeing builds those, but anyways, I digress because I'm in a really good mood. Okay, so this idea in the beginning, I call it informal market research. When they've got the idea, they're bouncing it around and they're exploring the requirements. And I'll talk a minute about how they begin to look for companies like yours and how they begin to evaluate us and where. But then as you go forward, there's the formal market research. And this is think about RFI or sources sought notices. I just mentioned a minute ago that there's over 700 RFIs that are due in the next 30 days. And by the way, these are just the ones that are on SAM. If you have a contract vehicle like Seaport Next Gen, those don't generally hit SAM. And there's, thousands and thousands of contract vehicles that people have out there. So there's a lot of sources sought and requests for information, RFIs, that are part of the government buyers research. And so they do this early in the cycle. One last thing about when do they look is I guess later on this afternoon, I have a post. I already wrote it this morning. It's going to go out this afternoon. But I have a post that's coming out on LinkedIn that talks about there's, excuse me, 862 contract opportunities or requirements for Naval Sea System Command, one buying command within the Navy. Their long-range acquisition forecast is out, and for the next couple of years, there's 862 opportunities. And so in there, since those are listed, then we can consider that those are open for the government trying to find buyers like you or to start thinking about the requirements, et cetera. So you want to go through those requirements and find the ones where you go, wow, we want to win this, and then start having conversations. I think in this thing that I share this afternoon, there's 171 different people, different points of contact within that long-range acquisition forecast, that if you see something, you can reach out. There's 2 people for every single row. Some of them are redundant on many opportunities. But anyways, this is when federal buyers are looking for you. They're not really looking for you and for buyers when they get into the formal RFP phase, when they have a request for quote or request for proposal. At that point, they're not looking for buyers. They're looking for bids. And that's a different thing. You want to get in when they're open to having conversations with you. So hopefully that makes sense. And let's move on now to the how. David Waltz, I meant to email you. If you guys are not tracking, I just said Naval Sea Systems Command. And really, David Waltz's peer over in Naval Surface Warfare Center, Crane, she was the one who put a notice out on LinkedIn about the long-range acquisition forecast. I'm like, oh, hey, I got to get a notice out. But David Waltz is in here, right? Federal buyer. He's in here with our training because he's looking for buyers like you. So later on, when I say where do they look, and I say LinkedIn, this is literally one of the ways I'm talking about is coming to events, trying to find businesses like yours. The federal buyer wants to find you. You just got to make it easier for them. Okay, so let's talk about how federal buyers choose to meet, how they choose which smalls to meet with. And one thing I want you to understand is this is based on my experience since 2018, working with hundreds and thousands of federal buyer type representatives and tens of thousands of small businesses. Understanding this world, there is not one way, right? But this is the most general way that federal buyers look for you when they go to look. The first thing they do is like they have an idea, and let's say cybersecurity is what they're looking for. So they do a keyword search on cybersecurity, or maybe they search on a key phrase like risk management framework, which is a component of cybersecurity. So they're doing that wherever they're going to do that. That'll be on the next slide. But they're doing that. And then they get back a whole bunch of results. This is no different than how you search for sellers. If you're trying to, find a new dentist, if you're trying to find somebody like I am to fix my garage door, whatever it is, we do a keyword search, key phrase search, and we get back this whole bunch of results. The next thing we do based on those results, or the next thing the federal buyer does based on those results, is that they match this search intent. They look for how does these companies, which ones of these companies match the search intent. And what I mean by this is if they search for cybersecurity, they will get thousands of results. So no matter what they're looking at, they'll see thousands of companies that say they do cybersecurity. But when those federal buyers look at your write-up or my write-up, they will see us say things like we do cybersecurity, cloud, data, warfare, airplanes in the sky, and digging ditches and everything else. And it'll become really obvious that we're not an expert cybersecurity firm. We're a company that says we do a bunch of things, including cybersecurity. First off, that's not good. And I want you to come to my training on Wednesday, and I'll tell you how to avoid that. So David Waltz and other federal buyers find you when they're looking by niching down. But right now, keep in mind, they searched for cybersecurity, and now they're trying to match the search intent. What they want to see in your write-up is that everything that you say is cybersecurity. When they look, it says we're a cybersecurity consulting company specializing in zero trust architecture and risk management framework. When they see that, risk management framework screams cybersecurity. When they see zero trust architecture, that is cybersecurity. I'm not here to debate cybersecurity in heavy details, but those things scream that this company matches the intent of my search on cybersecurity. Hopefully that makes sense, right? That's why it's really important for you to be able to understand what keyword or key phrase do you want to be found for. And actually, if you take a minute, put that in, like my company did, Microsoft SharePoint. I would say that's what I want to be found for, right? And I could do 1,000 other things, but I can't write 1,000 things. If the government searches for Microsoft SharePoint, I want them to find me. If the government searches for one keyword or key phrase for you, what is it? Put that in the chat. You might have done it up above, but just put it in the chat so I can see that. So the last thing they do after they do a keyword search and then they evaluate the search intent is they reach out. The third step the federal buyer does is they reach out to a bunch of these firms. They got a whole bunch of emails, a whole bunch of phone numbers maybe, and they send an email out. And they blind copy, 15, 20 people or whatever. I get emails from the VA all the time. They must forget that I'm not selling them anything, but they do it. They reach out and they're like, hey, we saw you do something. We'd love to be able to talk with you. The problem is many of us don't pay attention to those emails that are coming in because we have so many emails. So the third step the federal buyer is doing is who's showing up. And showing up in this case means I sent an email. I'm going to wait a day or two to see who responds. And if I get 5 or 10 companies, then I'm going to reach out to them. And anybody who responds afterwards, I'm going to ignore it. Or I'm going to politely respond and say, hey, thanks, we're good to go at the moment. We'll come back to you later. And then I never will because I got 5 or 10 companies. Does that make sense? Like if you're going to get your garage door fixed or you're going to get your car fixed and you reach out to 5 car companies, whoever gets back to you are the ones you were then going to reach out to and say, how much, how long will it take? How much does it cost for an initial review of my car? Those kind of things, whatever they are, you've already moved on past the can you do the work to the companies that said yes. And now you're having a conversation about that. So anybody else that comes in and says, we can do the work, even if they're the best, it's too late because you moved on. And if you can get a good enough car repair company, you're going to follow through with them. Hopefully this made sense, right? How federal buyers choose which smalls to reach out. They do a keyword search. They vet the results of the whole table down into a short list, right? They create a list of 5, 10, 20 companies, and that's more than enough to do continued market research. And then they reach out to them, and whoever responds, that's who they're having meetings with. It doesn't mean you can't then follow up with them or something. That's a whole different thing. I'm just telling you how they choose when they're choosing to find companies like yours. Okay, really quick, before I move to the last slide about where federal buyers look, I wanted to thank Voltron for being our sponsor for these live trainings that we do. It's a big deal that they did. I've been doing the sponsoring basically myself since 2018, and to have Voltron step up and believe in what we're doing and to help you and to help us continue our mission, I really appreciate it. If you're not familiar with them, they're an AI proposal writing company. And the thing I like best about them is that they're federally focused. They really zero in on the federal market, writing the best proposal drafts for you and final proposals with you. And they are able to take that down from weeks to just a few hours of having a strong, clear, compelling proposal that you can pursue work with. And it allows you to have a lot more time to do capture and have meetings with federal buyers. So thank you, Voltron. If you're feeling generous, do me a favor, say thank you to Voltron. If you're interested in their services, reach out to them, ask for a demo. They can do a demo with you. Okay, so let's move on to where do federal buyers look for small business government contractors. Um, based on everything I have learned from federal buyers, this is where they look, what I'm about to tell you. There are some other places that they're going to look. I'm not trying to create this all-inclusive list, but I want you to understand the general way of how any federal buyer will look who does market research. So the first place they look is their own personal collection of small businesses that have expressed interest in working with them or have sent them a capability statement. And so in this particular case, what I'm really talking about when I say a personal folder of capability statements, what I really mean about this is that they have a folder on their hard drive, and anytime we reach out and say, "Hi, I'm Neil. I do government contracting. Here's my capability statement." They're like, "Hey, great, Neil," and they put it in the folder, right? And if they go to a conference and they're doing matchmaking or something, they grab all those hundreds of capability statements. They put them in a folder. They don't want to throw them away, so they've got them saved. And when you send it electronically, that's where it's at. It's on their hard drive. So if they're looking for vendors, they might look there. The second place they'll look is existing vendors. If I'm Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane, I might look at a pool of vendors who are already supporting us and go, I wonder if any of these can support this new requirement and participate. It doesn't mean I'm closed-minded to adding new contractors in, but these existing vendors are proven quantity to the Navy, right? So I want to look at them. The third place, and this is the place where it really starts getting out there, they look at RFI and RFP responses. One of the things government federal buyers and all buyers hate is when they have a requirement, they ask for bids and they don't get any, or they get just a few. So when they get responses, they fall in love with you, right? They might not marry you, but they fall in love with you. And so the idea here is that if you're responding to RFIs or RFPs in an agency, again, let's talk about the Navy for a second, and you're only responding to the ones that you're actually really good at, then even if they couldn't award that contract to you, they've got you in their memory. They've got you in a list of, oh, here are the people who responded to my RFI last time. Here's the ones who responded to my RFP. You know what? There's enough of them. I'm just going to reach out to these ones and maybe nowhere else. The fourth one, and I guess I could have numbered this, the fourth one is internal agency supply portals. HHS, as an example, has its own supplier portal. And internal HHS buyers like at CDC, CMS, et cetera, they are encouraged to look at the HHS supplier portal, a portal of small businesses who say they want to work with these with HHS. They maintain the supplier portal so federal buyers can do their market research by looking in there. That is a huge one because if there's enough of us in there, then they don't need to go anywhere else. The next place they go is the overall supplier portal for the entire federal government, which is sam.gov, combined with the SBA's small business search tool. Those two make up your small business profile, basically sam.gov, right? In there, they have access to all 350,000 businesses. And so if they can't find who they're looking for in the first 4 spots, then they'll go there. And another way that they'll search for you, and this might be parallel to SAM, is they'll go out to websites like Google or to LinkedIn, like I mentioned a minute ago. I might go into LinkedIn and say, I'm looking for a hub zone that does RMF. And I'm going to see if I can get lucky that there's somebody out there with their LinkedIn profile that tells me they do risk management framework. And also, by the way, we're certified hub zone or something. If I can find that in LinkedIn, that's great. I'm finding people. If I find enough of them, I don't need to keep researching. Now I need to start reaching out to them. And then ChatGPT is, and whatever your favorite AI tool is, I do that myself. Hey, I'm looking for a company that can help me with my garage door. Go to the website, find me some, let me know. And they'll come back and say, hey, here's some in your area. So we are starting to use AI tools that are out there. These places are where you need to be so that when federal buyers are looking for a company like yours, they find you. All right, the last thing, and I only got 1 minute left. Last thing I want you to remember from today's training, or here's what I want you to remember from today's training. First off, buyers don't buy from the best. They buy from those who show up. So make sure that they're able to see you. And then finally, make it easy for them to find your company when they're doing outreach. Register in their supplier portal. Make sure LinkedIn has your capability statement. Things like that will help you get found. Do me a favor. If you found value in today's training, just repost this out on LinkedIn. Let other people know because the replay is available. And for all of us, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is ending on time. I'm out of time. I will see you in the next training.